Star Wars Rebels Season 4 premiere, Heroes of Mandalore. Definitely a great two-parter for opening up this final season. I hate saying that, but it's the final season of Star Wars Rebels, and it was a great way to start it off. For anyone who is not familiar with my reviews, pretty much all last season, all I kept talking about was, man, everything Mandalore related is the best stuff ever. Sabine is my favorite character on the team. I love Mandalorians. Like, they are probably, like, overall, if I go through, like, as a culture within Star Wars, Mandalorians are probably my favorite. They look sweet, they dual wield, they're the cowboys of Star Wars, they have jetpacks, and they look cool, because they always look so freaking cool, I can say it twice. And in this story, as far as what they've done with Rebels, it's just amazing, and that really carries on from some of the really epic stuff they did with Clone Wars. They even have the Darksaber now, which is the Mandalorian lightsaber, so they have everything that I like within the Star Wars universe is all Mandalorians at this point. I mean, all you need is being able to use the Force, and that's just about it. So, they're great characters. The lore is insanely amazing because it's so dark and violent, but at the same time, there's a bit of hope in there as well, especially with the way they're doing this story. And I was so happy that this was the start to the season. I was also insanely surprised. I don't know, for any of you who may have been keeping track of things, I didn't know this was going to be premiering. I'm on the East Coast, so for me, this episode did come on at 12:30 in the morning. So I wasn't prepared for that, and then for whatever stupid reason, my DVR recorded the first part, but not the second part, even though I looked at the guy and I was like, okay, it's recording. I was watching other stuff because I got home late, so I was like kind of backlogged, and I was like, okay, do this is finale, then I got Star Wars premiere, so I was like, okay, I got 2 finales to watch, and then the Star Wars premiere I'll do last. I didn't plan on it being so much later though, because I actually planned on watching Star Wars right after my last show, and I was like, well, can't do that because I have the first episode and I don't want to watch the first half and then wait to watch the second half. So I was like, well, I'll just watch my other show in the middle and then watch them both together because I didn't want to have that break in between. I just wanted to kind of keep it going. So it's almost like, it's like 5 in the morning now. It's 4:59 now because I had to wait until the show came back on at 3:30 in the morning. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even be doing this review tonight. But I was like, well, I'm going to be up anyway because I got my other stuff to watch and my other reviews. And I was like, I want to do it tonight. And it was super awesome. I don't know if this is supposed to be like the actual airing schedule, but I believe it is. It's always going to technically premiere at like 12:30. And then it's going to come on like 4 other times, which is absolutely insane. And I don't know who decided that that was actually a good idea. But I love it, personally speaking, because that means I get to watch it Sunday nights instead of waiting to watch it basically around the same time on Mondays because I work nights, so I'd have to wait anyway to see it until like, you know, almost midnight every night. So I was like, well, if I do it on Sunday, that works perfectly for me. I get to do it earlier, and then it's just like, boom, it's done. It's one of my Sunday shows now, so that is great, and I hope it does stay that way because 12:30 is not that late for me. So I get to watch, you know, every episode, and then it's like, boom, it's done, and then I just wait until it's like a weird thing to have a show premiere at 12:30 at night. So that's so insane for me. I know it's like, you know, it's earlier the further back you go, but it's still the craziest thing. Is like, why even premiere it like that? It's like, it's the earliest it's gonna be is 9 o'clock, and it's like, that's still I mean, that's early. I mean, that seems weird to me as far as like a kids channel, you know, as far as, you know, premiering kids programming like late at night. That seems weird to me, but I just didn't care. I got to see Star Wars, so I'm fine. But it was a great 2 episodes. In all honesty, I loved both parts. It kicks right off with the action. It was very simple. It was like, alright, we're going in, we're trying to save Sabine's dad. They start off by going to basically like this tower. Cool fight sequence. Ezra is terrible with the jetpack, which I thought was hilarious. So he's flipping and flying all over the place, still managing to survive though. But they're going through, we got some dual wielding. Sabine is using like the saber and then one gun, so she's flying around shooting and, you know, using the blade. Kanan was super badass in that first part where he didn't have a jetpack during that first fight, and he's just jumping on people's backs, and he's like cutting the jetpacks and then jumping to the next person. I was like, that is super cool. And they even had the guy, Rao, he was like, show off, and I was like, he kind of was, but that was a super cool moment. He's just jumping off of people's backs, cutting all the jetpacks up. And so we got a bunch of people flying around and shooting and stuff like that. They take on some of the ATDTs, the walkers in this show, and it was super cool. And I was like, all right, this is pretty awesome. And as they go through, more reinforcements come in for the Empire, and then we also have reinforcements come in for the heroes. And we actually get the reinforcement in the way of the woman who will ultimately become the new leader of the Mandalorians by the end of the second episode. And she was awesome. When she first came in, it was her and her peoples before they took their mask off and really started talking. And she comes in with her people, and they're just flying in. Boom, they do some kicks. Like the first person they showed did like a spin kick, and I was like, that was pretty sweet. The second dude, he flew between two guys and then landed on their backs and like slammed their heads together. And I was like, they're really good fighters. Come in, everything's all said and done. And then I really get to look at their costumes, and I was like, they have the coolest costumes, especially the leader. She had the sweetest thing ever. Like the way her mask looked, where it was like, it wasn't exactly gold. It was really like a beige and blue color scheme. And I was like, for some reason, that is like the coolest armor I've ever seen. And it just looks so sweet. Like the whole episode, I was just like, I cannot get over how sweet her costume looks, especially her helmet, like the design. I was like, this is freaking amazing. It looks so cool. And so she comes in, and we find out that basically she is the sister of one of the former rulers of Mandalore. And oddly enough, her sister's name was Satine, I believe it was. I was like, that's weird that they made it rhyme so close to Sabine's name. But we find out that she, is the sibling to one of the former rulers of Mandalore. And Sabine was like, well, like your actions and like you basically are a legend on this planet. And so she wanted to give her, the Darksaber. And she declined it. She was like, I had my chance to lead and I failed. And she was kind of, letting Sabine have that chance to, be that ruler. So I thought that was cool. Of course, with her showing up, that was because they found out that Sabine's dad was not there. They ultimately end up getting some intel that he's actually on a convoy. So that's when Sabine's mother and brother come into play, and they are like the first attack to send the convoy down the canyon to a different path. And so that way they have like their whole sequence where they're the second attack to basically dole out some damage on the convoy, get Sabine's dad, and it was a cool sequence. We got to see speeder bikes, which are my favorite freaking vehicles in the entire Star Wars universe. It's so simple, but ever since Return of the Jedi, I was like, man, that's just sweet. They move so insanely fast. Even in the video games, sometimes they move faster than you can control, and it's like, crap, I'm gonna die, driving this thing. But they're always that sweet to me. It's just like, a jet boost motorcycle is pretty much what those are. So we got some speeder bikes. Chopper hit a dude with a gun, which was like, that was funny, but I was like, oh, he actually had a little action sequence. Ezra was just fumbling all over the freaking place. Like, he starts things off, like, it starts off perfectly. Sabine hits the ship with some paint. Her dad instantly knew that it was her, which I thought was cool. And then they go through, like, their distraction attack. And then Ezra, he climbs under the ship, uses his lightsaber, but then he like falls and he basically drags the lightsaber at least partway through the ship, because I thought it was going to just slice through the entire ship, but it sliced him through most of it, and then he catches himself at the end. And so they're like, okay, this was a ploy so that they could get him out, so we need to actually shoot through this instead of falling back, because they were falling into the trap initially. And then it was like, oh, the ship's being attacked because they know he's here, so it's time for us to get out. So that leads to a crazy battle where people are going like back and forth between the ships. Sabine is on the speeder bike. She's going up to ships and then having to pull back, and then she's blocking. Then she gets knocked off the speeder bike. Rao and I wish I could remember the woman's name, but the woman who ultimately becomes the leader, they're teaming up. They're dealing with the jet troopers as well. I guess technically everyone was the Mandalorian. Well, they weren't. Not everyone was Mandalorian. Some of them were just stormtroopers. So they're dealing with the jet troopers. And, they have to team up on the ship because they're getting surrounded by, it's like 4 dudes on one side. So she goes around through the middle of the ship and shoots some people, and he shoots some people from the outside. So everybody's hopping around. Kanan is fighting, then he loses his lightsaber, and then he's just grabbing people and flipping them off, flipping them off the convoy. And it was a great fight. It was like people were just moving around left and right, and there were just issues back and forth because they were kind of just waiting on Ezra to get into the ship. And they just kept getting, they were so outnumbered. It was like, all right, they keep surviving, but something is constantly going wrong where they have to like either hide in one spot or, do some drastic maneuvers to finally get a little bit of an advantage so that Ezra can actually save, Sabine's dad. But ultimately, everything works out fine. They get into the ship. He's able to, free Sabine's dad. He gives him the jetpack, sends him on his way, and then he uses the Force to jump from the convoy ships to get to the cliff, and then ultimately Sabine ends up pulling him up because he's about to fall down, which I feel like that's the second time that's happened for him. He's always getting like saved off of the cliff or something, because the last time I think it was Ezra that grabbed him in midair and he had to use the Force on him. So it was kind of funny. I was like, we've definitely had this happen to Ezra a couple times before, or at least one time, but I feel like it was 2 times kind of come to mind, I feel. But they end up saving him, and then it's like, all right, everything's great, and they talk to Sabine's mom, and she's like, well, that's great, because we have 2 victories. Now, the stormtroopers are retreating. The Empire is taking off. We got 2 victories today. This is fantastic. And then this walker drops in, and they talked about it before, and it was like ready the weapon. I'm readying the weapon. We don't know what this weapon is exactly, and so this walker just comes along. I don't know what's happening, and then we cut to what's happening with Sabine and what they hear. And she hears this machine start up, and she's like, it can't be. And she's like, you need to get out of there as fast as possible. And it turns out that the machine was actually her creation, which led to some really great moments in this episode. The ending to the first part was amazing, because honestly, I thought they definitely killed her mom and her brother. And I was like, wow, they are starting off this season super dark. Like, last season was dark. We had some moments for sure. But I was like, they are kicking this season off, and they killed her mom and her brother right after they saved her dad. So it's that moment where it's like, a high point to a crushing low point, and it makes it even worse. And it was still bad, even without it being her mother and her brother, which we find out, at the beginning of the second part that they survived. It was still this tragic moment where she sees these bodies just in ash, and it's because of the device that she made. And it goes back to one of the basically worst parts of this character, where she hated what she had become because she realized what the Empire was truly doing with her people, and that's what made her leave the academy. And she made this insane weapon because she, as she put it, was like, it was a task, and I was arrogant, and I wanted to basically make the best thing that I possibly could. It was a challenge, and it was just like, man, this is just a young girl who didn't really understand exactly what the Empire was all about. And then she learned, and she did what she could to destroy that, because not only is it an insanely deadly weapon, because it vaporizes people within their armor, it specifically targets Mandalorian armor, which, goes against like their whole culture as far as like them being within the armor, is because it's hundreds of years old, which I didn't know that was a part of their lore. As much as I love them, I don't go into like Star Wars lore. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I know I like it, and I'll just get too deep, so I can't even start. But she's like, the armor I wear is 500 years old, and it's like, I repurposed it to fit myself, but the battles and the blood and that, that's a part of who we are. Like, we wear ancient armor. That's what they do. And it was just nuts. I was like, wow, no wonder they were so pissed. Like, when they first got on that ship, that was a great moment. And like, she gets right on the ship, and that woman pinned her against the wall. It's like, if they could have sworn, she would have dropped an F-bomb, I think. It would be like, what the F is wrong with you? Like, how could you do that to your own people? Like, you're a traitor to all of Mandalore, which came up a second time when they got off the ship. And it was just a great moment. And Ezra was saying, like, why don't you guys just switch armor? And they looked at him real funny, and I love that scene, because I was like, I knew that was going to happen. And they give them the explanation of how important the Mandalorian armor is to them. It's not like they just make it. And I'm sure, some characters do at some point. But for the most part, it's ancient armor that's been passed down for centuries. And it's like, man, that is very freaking cool. So of course they get off the ship, and that's where more people get mad at her, and it's like, we know you made that machine, which I thought was interesting. I mean, was she like the only Mandalorian that ever went to work for the Empire? Because the fact that they knew that it was her machine specifically, considering, it kills everyone that encounters it, I was kind of surprised that they knew it was her. So, I don't know, I just thought that was weird. And she was fairly famous, like, that's been a thing. So, I think that's definitely a part of her character, where they know that she built this weapon, but it's just something that kind of was in the past. So maybe they knew that it was her, because it was like, she's the one who, that's why she left, was because she made some dangerous thing for the Empire. So I guess it makes sense, but I was kind of surprised that these people just knew. It was like, we know that you did this and you're a traitor. But once again, it was still a great moment. And then they had a super epic moment. I love this, when everyone's trying to be like, don't attack her and stuff. And her mom was like, if you had any attack on my daughter, it's an attack on Clan Ren. And before she could even finish, Tristan was like pulling his gun out, and the way they looked when they pulled their guns out, it was like, that's a cool little shot. It was just like, we will mow everybody down. Like, I don't care what you feel, you will die today if you attack my daughter. So that was just a cool moment. Like, he was holding her because she was wounded, and before she could even finish, it's like, yep, time to shoot. Mom wants me to shoot somebody. I think I'm gonna have to shoot somebody. And they both just pulled their guns out, and it was like, that's pretty cool. That was a nice little shot. It was like, it'll get serious if it needs to get serious, and that's just how they are. But I love that scene, and ultimately, everything calms down, and we have the guy who is trying to utilize this machine, and he's trying to make it better, because when he showed it off to, I I can't even think of the dude's name right now. I'm totally blanking on the main villain of the last two seasons, this season and the last season. I can't even think of his name right now. But the Admiral, Thrawn, there it is. I'm glad I knew it was Admiral at least, because Grand Admiral Thrawn, the whole thing is how I remember him. But when we showing it off to Thrawn, it was like, oh, you know, I noticed it's not as powerful as you said it would be, as you promised. It was like, or did you think I didn't notice that? It was like, you know, we only had prototypes and I did the best that I could, so that's why they had to get Sabine. And so he's trying to get this machine to max power to basically wipe out armies and everything. And I love the fact that they had the guy that was with them. And at first it was simple. It was like, you know, how do you know that they won't eventually use this on us? Like, you know, if we perfect this weapon for them, sure, they'll use it on Mandalorians, but why wouldn't the Empire use it on us? Even if we, you know, are with them, why not? And of course he keeps it simple. It's like, you know, loyalty. That's pretty much it. It's like absolute loyalty. Let's go. And then he just moves on. And so then that continues towards the end of the episode when they actually do attack the ship, which was a great sequence. Like, just some of the action, especially the part when Ezra is going basically towards Sabine after they finish their mission, and he opens the blast door opens up, and it's just like chaos. It's just a bunch of people flying around shooting and a bunch of walkers, and he was just like, whoa. And I was like, that's an appropriate response to that scene, because it was just like this huge thing. And it seemed like nobody was dying. It was just like a bunch of people dodging and lasers and stuff flying around. It's like, it's super chaotic, but no one's actually getting hurt. It's just really chaotic. So I love visually how that scene looked. But as they're going through, of course, Sabine and the new eventual ruler, I really wish I remember her name because I don't want to keep saying that. But they end up getting towards the machine, and their plan is to destroy it. But ultimately, they get captured because the guy, you know, he presses the button. It's like, you know, this won't kill you. It's just to knock you out a little bit. And so it's like, all right, want you to perfect it. Want you to perfect it so that the Empire can use it to destroy all Mandalorians. And then that's where they bring it up again, where the guy's like, sir, what if they use it against us? Like, if we perfect this, what is to stop them? Like, there's nothing to stop them this time. And of course, he's been wearing Stormtrooper armor this whole time, which is why when it first went off, he was like, you know, stand back, because he knew the guy that was with him was in the Mandalorian armor. So eventually he just gets pissed off with him. It's like, all right, F this, and he pushes the button again, and he hurts the dude that was on his team. And so they're all kind of just trapped inside this thing, you know, with the machine going, until Sabine is like, all right, I'll fix it for you. And so, of course, she ends up changing it, and that was something that they referenced early on in the episode, where it was like, well, can you change it to go to other armors? And she was like, well, I could do that, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, but no, we should definitely just completely destroy this. And I was like, they definitely said that, because it's going to happen. And of course, that's what happened. She says, I'll perfect it, and then she hits some buttons and stuff, and I was like, she's definitely just switching it to Stormtrooper armor. And that's what she does, and she kind of gives a speech about, you know, Mandalorians not being on the knees to the Empire and stuff like that. And the guy was mad, and he was like, okay. And so she says it's full, you know, it's at its like max potential, but I'm asking you not to use it. He's just like, whatever. Pushes that button, and it hits her and reflects right to him, and it just took him down, and it went through like the whole building, or the whole ship. They weren't in the building. And it looked so cool, because the funny thing about it was that the lightning that was striking people was like, it wasn't like, oh, a little bit of lightning is in them. It looked like a giant chunk of lightning was flying through people, but nobody was dying. And I was like, it's funny to see like lightning hitting people, and it's like this giant bolt hitting them. And it's like, oh, it's just gonna hurt you. I thought it was gonna kill everybody just slower. It was like, oh, it's not going to kill you, it's just going to hurt you. I was like, that is a giant bolt of lightning. And then there's smaller bits of lightning as well. And it's just going through the whole thing. And that was probably one of the best parts of the entire episode, just visually. You know, you have the couple of people affected right there. And then it jumps through the window, and it goes into the walkers, and it's hitting people. And then it drops from the walkers to the people on the ground, and it's like arcing outward like actual lightning as it's dropping onto more targets. And then, you know, Kanan and Chopper end up surrounded in the communications room. And then he's like, all right, well, how am I going to get out of this? Giant bolt just shoots through the hallway and hits this dude in the back. And then it's like, okay, well, he's good too. Everyone's just getting attacked. And then eventually Sabine gets the speech, because she was starting to get, you know, go like full Mandalorian with the rage. And the woman kind of comes up to her and is like, you have an opportunity to lead us into the next stage of who we're going to be as Mandalorians. Are we going to rebuild on hope or fear? And I thought that was cool that she gave her that speech, and it showed her leadership qualities without a doubt. And ultimately Sabine was like, okay, we're going to destroy the machine. We aren't going to use it as power. we're just going to get rid of it and it can no longer hurt anyone. They ultimately escape the ship, and that's when Sabine talks to her again. It's like, hey, I want to give you the Dark Blade because you deserve to be the ruler of Mandalore. And then they walk off the ship and it's like, I'm not the only one. And then all the other clans, kind of back her up. So unfortunately, Sabine no longer has the Darksaber. But of course, that's a simple way for Sabine to be like, all right, I'm no longer the ruler. Now she gets to be in the entire season. She'll be with the group the rest of the time. Because that was the big thing, was like with her being the new leader, or at least, fighting to be the leader. She wasn't with the team for a big chunk of the last season. I was like, oh, that's so sad, because Sabine is like my favorite character on the show. So easy way to kind of keep things going where everything's solved there. I feel like that also means we won't see as much of Mandalore, which also kind of sucks. It's like it's a double-edged sword. It's like, sweet, that means Sabine's on the team, but that also means we see just less Mandalorian stuff in general. It's just Sabine. I hope that we get to see her sister come back from the last season. I figured that would be a part of the story, and this seems like it's basically the end of the Mandalorian thing. Like, everyone seems to be rallied behind this woman, and then they'll fight the Empire, and I think that'll be it, which is unfortunate because I do want to see some more Mandalorian stuff, so hopefully that's still in there, somewhere. We still get to see them go back to Mandalore towards the end of the series, and it's like, alright, this is that final push for this story arc, and then that's officially done in a later episode. So I hope that's the case, but definitely an awesome two-parter. We do get to see Hera. We don't see Zeb at all, but we do get to see Hera hologram-wise, and I just want to mention that because those were the only two that weren't on Mandalore, but we had Chopper, of course, Kanan, and Ezra, so we had 3 of the members actually there. We get to see our 4th. Unfortunately, we don't see Zeb at all in these 2 parts. And obviously, Sabine was like all over that. It was like her main story. So of course she was there. But love both parts. Love seeing all the Mandalorian stuff. Love seeing the Darksaber. Love seeing all the different armor pieces. Sabine's mom had a sweet piece of armor too. I never noticed that before. I don't think they had her put the helmet on when she was in the last season, but hers was almost like a golden it almost looked like a tiger head a little bit, or almost like a panther, like the way it almost had like ear points. I was like, that looks really sweet too. It was like, I felt like they didn't have her wear that before, because it was, her outfit looks cool where it's like black and gold, and then her mask is almost full gold, and I was like, that's really sweet. It almost looks like a tiger's head. But it was awesome. Just the visuals were good, the action was good. That trickery emotion that they had during the end of the first half was definitely great. So loved the whole thing. I'm very excited for this season. Sucks that it's the final season naturally, but we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. Of course, want to know your theories for this season and what you guys want to see for this season, and naturally, just what you guys thought about this premiere in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.